Alright, should be live now. It's telling me that I'm live through YouTube. Let's see how everyone's doing. It's been 2-3 years since I've streamed on this channel, and it's been like I made the video for the first time in, I don't know, 2-3 years the other week. How's everyone doing? You guys alright? Okay. Yeah, so the reason I ended up making that video the other week was because I was kind of tired of certain things I was seeing, and I thought it might be worth throwing my hat into the ring. I think that the final straw was basically when Dave said made his mistake on the stream. But really there are other things that I think I was probably complaining about these before. But you know, there's a lot of problems with different things. So I figured, because I've learnt a lot over the last couple of years, and for those who aren't following my other channels, I suppose there's probably quite a lot to go through because many things happened. So maybe we'll wait a little bit before before I get into that, since other people might show up. So hopefully the stream connection isn't too bad. Right. So for those who don't know, I will go into this when when obviously I get more into stream. But biggest changes are, oh hello Charlie Adams, are that I got married, and that I now have a son, which is quite an interesting thing. I apologise if there's connection issues. YouTube is telling me it's not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming, so hopefully it hasn't broken it. So yeah, now I'm a husband and a father, which is quite a change from the last time I streamed on here, because I think last time I streamed on here I had just been kicked out of a house because of some drama with other people in there, and I stopped doing the Renaissance Man stuff. And I was just basically realising that a lot of what had happened was my own fault. And so I, got my act together basically in a lot of ways. And why the hell is there no data? Oh, bloody hell. Oh, thanks. I'm currently looking at the connection. I might actually have to go and talk to my wife about securing that connection, if you'd give me 2 seconds. I will be back, just give me a second. Right, hopefully that's a lot better. So I should probably explain the reason why that's happened. The flat that we're living in now doesn't have a wired connection, and so we've been relying on phones, which typically give a reasonably alright, at least download, and this seems to be bugging out. So I've just asked to go grab the connector that I'm using at the moment, just to move it into the room to see if it's a bit better. So. Okay, so people are like, congratulations on your marriage and child. Thank you. So yeah, that was the main thing that happened on my hiatus from this particular channel. Wow, it's jumping around terribly. This is awful. I hope you guys are still like connected or something. I'm going to refresh the live chat, see if this makes some sort of difference. So yeah, where should I start? Yeah, so marriage. Certainly revised a lot of my views on women. I will say that, and I think a lot of the advice I can't really remember much of my advice. I remember once my brother-in-law knows about this channel, and he pointed out that I'd once advised people to go to bars and meet women, which Um, to be honest, I don't think that any particular advice like that is very useful, given the circumstances under which I met my wife. Like I met my wife in the middle of lockdown through bloody Discord of all things. So, you can meet a woman anywhere, right? What I would probably caution more is to be sorry. Um, so I was distracted by mass creation broadcasts comment. So I ended up meeting my wife on bloody Discord of all places, right? Um, Now the only thing I think I could consistently give single men as advice is literally just to pray for a wife. As much as that seems like pathetic or beta or anything like that, or kind of simpering, um, there is really no other way to really. I mean, even then doesn't ensure it because God might intend something else. But I think it's the most efficacious thing you can do. Because if you go out and meet women, because you're not interested in meeting just any woman, right? You shouldn't be anyway. You want to be meeting a woman who's actually worth your time, and there are not that many of them. So just going out and trusting luck, I don't think that's the wisest approach. I think praying for one that makes sense makes a lot more sense because then God acts, and He's inspired that prayer, and then He can act in accordance with that if He believes that it's right that you're married. So, I mean, it's like, and it can happen literally anywhere. Like I said, I met my wife on Discord. So yeah, in terms of, there's not really much. We met, we had a few dates, had a bit of a break at one point. We got back together. We violated a lot of the secular dating advice, and then we got married. And it's complaining about the bloody streaming again. Why is it doing that? Stream status poor. Low or should be receiving enough data. Yeah. Yeah. So, what else? So what else have I done in this time? So I've actually done quite a lot. So last I recall, this is such a meandering stream. I should have really planned this better. In the time between 2020 and now, which is the nearly 4 years since I was on this channel, I've gotten married. I've had a son. I've learnt Latin to a pretty reasonable standard. I've begun my career. I did a master's degree. I finished my bachelor's degree. Yeah. I got out of. I haven't fallen into any mortal sins of impurity this entire decade, as far as I know. So I could maybe help with that. But yeah, I mean, a lot has happened, and it's kind of hard to unpack it. So I suspect I'm probably a completely different person from what a lot of people remember. And those who followed along with the other channels, like Computing the Soul and Venturas ad Noctem, probably got a better idea of the stuff that's happened over that time. But I think that the biggest thing, and this is kind of a historical, or maybe not the biggest thing, but one of the big things that's really impacted over that time is how the dissident right spheres really broke down. So, for those who don't know, there was a big community around Dave the Distributist, and it kind of broke down into at least two groups I'm aware of. There's my group, which we spiraled off into religious scholarship, and we spiraled into looking into the Catholic faith a lot more. And there was the group that seems to have gotten more political and seems to have forgotten, maybe not forgotten, maybe that's a bit cruel, maybe let the faith take a bit of a back seat, at least from what I can see. And I suppose we've developed in different trajectories, so that's led to a bit of chafing, although some people will consider us both sides to be dissident right or whatever that means. I'd say we're very different, and I think that the video that I made the other day was very indicative of that, and I think it's probably emblematic of just how things have broken down between the different groups, and indeed how I wish we could kind of help the other group, because there's some stuff that makes sense that's coming out of that side, right? And I made an off comment that I wasn't appreciative of the basket weaving, because it seemed to me that it would involve a lot of people that aren't the sorts of people that I necessarily want to be interacting with, precisely because of the lack of the emphasis on the sacred. But I can see that as a positive move. The only problem is it's reinforced with philosophies that don't especially make that much sense. And by that I mean the emphasis on figures who aren't really teaching, the best of Catholic teaching, and certainly not they're not teaching virtues in the way that we would understand them, and that's obviously that's quite bad, because if we don't have the right virtues, then first of all, how we're going to establish a society, and second of all, what's Jesus going to say to us when we die and we face him? And so I figured the video that I'd release was about poor reading, and I'd just say, well, look, right, you can read Carlyle, you can read your elite theorists, and I mean, I've heard the names to death, but there are better people to read. Like, what precise, what kind of spiritual insight, well, that was my glasses going flying, are you going to gain from, say Thomas Carlyle, that you're not going to find in Aquinas or Bonaventure? Like, even just like The Life of St. Francis by Bonaventure, wonderful book. You're just not going to find it. And that's the first thing. The second thing, as well, I said earlier on that I've developed a proficiency in Latin. I wouldn't say that I'm fluent. I'd say that I can pick up a lot of things and read them relatively, all right. I've got this biblical commentary from the 17th century that I'm able to read and get the gist of a lot of the time. I can read a lot of the Bible. I can read Aquinas, probably with the dictionary at the very least, if not facing English translation, just to assist with certain words. And this is something that I feel quite strongly about, and I think that Thinking Ape actually made this point before. I don't understand why there's so many trads, and there isn't an overwhelming, serious interest in learning these languages, because our entire tradition is tied up in these languages, and it's the same with just dissident right people in general. Like, if we want to return to a tradition, why not spend the time learning these languages properly? Because, like, for example, medieval Latin, 1% of it's translated, 99% isn't. And you might say something along the lines of, oh, well, those works that we know of right now are what constitutes our tradition. Well, I mean, a lot of them aren't as more recently translated as you think, and the translations aren't necessarily of very good quality. Like, this even affects things as fundamental as St. Thomas Aquinas. I've seen people complain about the translations of St. Thomas in some of the publicly available, the purchasable volumes of his works. And so you don't know what you're getting necessarily very well, and you're missing out on all manner of different things that aren't in English, which I think is a great shame. Like, not all of Augustine even is translated into English. And we're missing out on that because very, very few people have any kind of ability to read in Latin, and I'm pretty sure I've gotten a pretty good idea how to learn it. But there doesn't seem to be sufficient interest to actually address this question, which is a great shame, because if we don't have access, I mean, it seems to me self-evident, but it obviously isn't, that if you read the texts and associate with the texts of a healthy society, it's somewhat similar to talking to a person from a healthy society. And so you're going to start to adapt the habits of healthy people, and that leads to healthy communities. If you have correct attitudes in yourself as a person, then through your actions that can propagate through the whole society. So why don't we go back to a time when things were healthier and just start figuring out what they did? And I mean, this doesn't even have to be a particularly masculine thing involving reading biblical treatises or stuff like that. I found some really interesting things in different places that I never would have expected. Like, I was reading this educational text just for school students or the equivalent of school students in the 17th century, and it teaches you all sorts of things. Like there's an entire section that goes into different herbal remedies. Like for example, did you guys know that oregano for you Americans, like you can use that to treat toothache, right? I never would have known that if I hadn't gone through these different texts. And even when it does come to things like defending the Bible against atheists, we have lots and lots of commentaries on sacred scripture from this period that provide interesting insights on some of those controversial passages. And that's before we even get into things like ambiguities being cleared up in the text by just knowing the original languages of those texts. So I would say, yeah, I don't understand why there isn't an interest. I'm not saying that all people should learn it. I think that everybody should know somebody who's fluent in Latin. I mean, one of the popes of the last century said as much as with relation to priests. Priests should be able to speak and read in Latin, and we don't have that now, unfortunately. And so, I mean, I think that it just makes sense that we would have a significant minority of people in this collection online that would know how to do such things, but there doesn't seem to be an interest. So that's kind of life. But by the way, guys, if you have any questions at all, I see there are 11 of you watching, and it's sort of been hovering between 13 and about 9. By all means, ask them, because this is kind of an unstructured stream. I just figured that I'd just do something and sort of talk a bit more about, well, not just how my life has gone, but also how my view of the world has changed and how things have changed around me. I'd also say as well that the sort of the stagnation that's going on in the political movements as well. As you can tell, I'm kind of unstructured talking in an unstructured way. It's really not done. It's not done wonders for a lot of the political movements as well, because it just seems to have broken down. Like, at least people aren't reading Evola anymore, right? But it doesn't make it any better when you're just reading stuff that you could you could find better summations of it in other authors. So Absolute Defender asks, why should priests read and write Latin? Presumably, presumably that's what you mean. Well, one of the popes, I think it was one of the popes of the mid 20th century. I think it was Pius XII. Actually wrote something about this being necessary. But the reason why I think that even lay people should know Latin is because so much of our tradition, so much of what it means to be a European, let alone a Catholic, is locked up in these languages and untranslated. And so how can you have a real thickness of identity if you don't even know what constitutes your identity, let alone the useful aspects of that, like, for example, scientific treatises and stuff like this, because these people weren't fools. Was it John the 23rd? Yeah, there was a lot of different popes who wrote about this. I think even Leo the 13th wrote about the lack of Latin skill at the end of the 19th century, right? It's a great shame. So, is that Resvero? He asks, what should I do with my life? Well, I don't know you, friend. I would suggest very strongly that you go to mass as much as possible and receive the sacraments as much as possible and pray, and do reading insofar as you need. I don't know if you know where your weaknesses are. I don't know if you know where your strengths are or what you need to attain, but with a discriminating eye, not just picking up any old nonsense, I'd try and solve those problems. Now, when it comes to women, ignore everyone online for the most part, right? Like, all these people talking about, oh well, you can go meet a girl in a bar, or you should do my technique for cold approach, or these it's a waste of time. It really is a complete waste of time, and I hate this because I find myself relating more and more to the advice that my parents gave me, and people like dislike like boomers when they're right, but really it just will happen if you're supposed to. And one way you could maybe speed it up is just to ask God for a GF or something, right? Okay. Oh, by the way, this is Shrimp from the Cessless chat. Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. I can only really say this now. Now I've gone through the whole process of getting a GF and then getting married. But yeah, it will happen if it needs to. And the best thing that you can do for yourself, aside from cutting out negative influences, is just to pray for one. Because you can watch all of these depressing kind of incel streamers, and they may well be right. They may be 100% right about the situation on the outside, in a general sense. But you aren't interested in the general in this particular part of life. You're interested in the particular, right? The average woman might be terrible. That might be true. But you're marrying a particular woman and not the general woman, so you pray for the particular woman instead of the general woman. And you don't lose hope because the general woman is terrible. Because you could still receive, the particular woman that you want. Which is, I would hope, and it really should be, and if you are wanting anything else besides this, you should really think about what you want, is a woman who's virtuous. Regardless of anything else. One who's focused on pursuing God. So, do you have any advice for setting and achieving Latin learning goals? Well, it really depends what you want to do, right? Now, I'm going for a sort of a general fluency in Latin. I'm kind of a bit of an impasse here, but I suspect what you're probably asking is, well, how do I get to a point where I can actually have facility with the language? So I can actually use it in some kind of sense. And I have that. Now, what I would recommend you do is, let's be honest, and people aren't going to like this because they've been told, 3 months, if you master this grammar table, you'll have the language down. No. The way that you master any language is through a hell of a lot of reading and listening. You need thousands upon thousands of words. So for context, the Bible in English is about maybe 1 million, maybe 1.1 million words. In Latin, it's somewhere between 600 and 650,000. To get to for reference, the amount that I've read in Latin, excluding repeats, so this is going over the same content over and over again, it's probably somewhere around about 1.3 and 1.4 million words. And having read that much, I can manage a lot of things. I can read a lot of Renaissance Latin. It really depends on the topic, but I can read a decent amount. And you need to read really that much. And so there's actually a website called Refold, which I think gets as close as I've seen to any of the popular online methods for learning languages to getting it right. And it suggests that you do 3 things. And I'm not so sure on the third, but I'll explain the first 2. The first one is get a basic grammatical understanding of the language. So you just go through maybe not necessarily a textbook, but through something like Lingua Latina per se illustrata, which is a introductory reader for Latin. It's called Refold. I'll type it for you. You go through that and you get like a basic grasp of the grammar. You don't need anything too crazy. And the reason this is helpful is it helps you to establish the second thing, which is it suggests going through 500 hours of content. So this can be reading, it can be listening, it can be done in any way you please. And I probably haven't reached 500 hours in Latin myself. I'm probably more like about half of that, maybe. Maybe a bit, probably, I'm not sure, maybe 300, because at the beginning I struggled through texts that were a bit above my level. 500 hours immersing in the language, which is to read and to listen to stuff that's appropriate for your current level. So that could be learning texts like Lingua Latina, which I've just mentioned, Lingua Latina per se illustrata. Or this could be through easy natural, easy texts that are intended somewhat for native speakers. So this could be the Gospel of John, the translation in the Vulgate in Latin, and you basically go through these things and find what's at your level, and you just read and read and read. Now, one of the things the Refold people will suggest that I have yet to find a solution to in Latin, but I think is extremely good advice just intuitively, is that you pick stuff that is initially slice of life, which is apparently some sort of Japanese anime concept, but basically it's like Friends or something. And the reason for this is that you get a certain level of vocabulary that isn't particularly specialized by doing this, and that means that you're able to read a greater variety of the language by doing it. Now with Latin, I can't really think of that. I'm actually working on a website to try and determine these sorts of texts in a way. Something where you can stick in a text and get an idea of roughly how difficult it is. I think that Lives of the Saints might be a way to go with this, but I haven't read any Lives of the Saints in Latin, so I can't tell you if this works, but my suspicion is that would be a fairly close approximation, and probably a less boring one at that. And basically you just do this for 500 hours, and then you can read whatever you want, and you will probably be able to read most things relatively easily, although there'll be, you'll still learn words, and you'll still learn everything. You're always going to be learning new words, just as you're learning, new words in English or whatever your native language is. So you basically just read a lot. And then the third one is they suggest having an Anki deck with the top 5,000 words or something like this. I haven't confirmed this myself. I can certainly see it being useful in the fact that you're going to be going through all this content, you're not going to know the words, and that will help you. And I think it's supposed to only be there to sort of speed things up. But I can't confirm that from personal experience, except for a little bit with different textbooks where I've used Anki, which is a SRS spaced repetition system software with these words, which is what they suggest. And I've noticed it's made text more comprehensible, but I do find it really boring. I'm not going to lie. That's not 100% necessary, but it would probably help. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on Latin. There, if anybody actually wants to learn it, that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned over the last 3-4 years. It's that everything is possible, anything is possible, but everything isn't possible, and that you have to be really ruthless with your time, and you need to devote yourself to different things, based on that time. And you've got to look at things and really decide their priority, because you just aren't going to be able to do everything. Not as a family man, not as somebody. Maybe working a full-time job. Maybe being married, you could do a lot of these things. Having a kid, having a son is a significant disruption to time that marriage simply isn't. And you've got to be aware of that if you're going to get involved in this kind of thing, this whole marrying people thing, this whole marrying business. So I was just making sure my alarm wasn't on my phone. Okay, let's see if there are any other questions. But yeah, I just think I'm surprised this isn't talked about more. Actually learning. You think people who are really interested in saving Western civilization might take a bloody interest in it, outside of, the ramblings of people writing in the 19th and 20th century, but apparently not. Shame. So, I will say that Latin does present difficulties that Refold often doesn't address, because Refold is largely used by people who are studying Japanese and things like that, and they have tons and tons of media, so you can just throw on an anime. With Latin, there is a lot of podcast content, but a lot of it makes me want to peel my eyes out, because it's really boring and it's about the same things, and it's largely from Latin teachers in schools, and they have a very different view on reality than I do, and they have vastly different interests. There's one woman who's pretty good, actually. She's called Satura Lanks, and she has a set of podcasts on authors writing in the Imperial and Republican Roman period, and she gives them nice simple lives in quite simple Latin, and they're quite pleasant to listen to. But beyond that, I've listened to a lot of Latin, and a lot of it is kind of terrible. Okay, he talked about, but not often done. It's talked about, but not often done. A lot of the new learning comes out after out of formative education. I think my personal, I don't know why YouTube has decided to add some sort of heart thing, but it's making it really difficult to read the stream chat. Not make the same mistake with my children. Oh yeah, I mean, like this is another thing. This I imagine a lot of people watching this. There are now 18 people watching it. A lot of people are going to think this is a really autistic take, but I'll stand by it. I think that people should start speaking Latin again, and the reason for this is that being able to speak Latin produces a lot of content that makes it a lot easier for other people to learn the Latin, so they can just go read. Because and it's the same with ancient Greek. If people did this, it would make life a hell of a lot easier for people coming up, either as children who are trying to educate in our traditions, or people nowadays, people who are adults trying to learn it. If people just produced interesting content in these languages that you can just stick on in the background while you're working or you're going to the shop, and listen through, then that would provide a lot of the needed immersion to bring people to a decent command of the language. That you can't just get through reading text, because reading texts dominates your ability to do anything else while you're doing it. So yeah, I mean that's why I think everyone should speak. Everyone who's studying Latin and Greek should get to a point where they can speak, so they can just start making content, so we can get more people more quickly and less painfully. So we can get them to have the ability to actually read about their own ancestors and about how they can be saved. Let me see if the heart disappear if you use it. Oh, okay. Have you got it too on the live chat? The heart reacts teehee. I don't know whose idea that was. Very annoying. Engage with your audience. Huh, I guess I can click a button and I can engage with you. Start a poll. Okay. Well, I'll start a bloody poll. I'm just typing. Chat. Go. There we go. Why not? Lost a bunch of viewers because I stayed quiet probably or something like that. Yeah, there we go. Just going to muck around. I think my personal goal is not to make the same mistake with my children. I mean, exactly. I mean, having a son is a real kick in the bum, right? To get you to do things. And it's driven me to do a lot of things, to be honest. It's driven me to reevaluate how I'm living life in a lot of ways. The whole reason why the whole reason why I speak Latin to my son, right? So sometimes I'll be sat with my son and I'll just speak it to him because I want him to pick it up. Because if he doesn't pick it up, he's going to have greater difficulties, interacting with our traditions. And he actually kind of likes it a lot of the time. Like, he seems to prefer it. Like, when I attempt to speak Greek at him, he freaks out. But if I speak Latin to him, probably because it was broadcast to him in the womb. But he actually likes it. And he starts smiling. It's like, oh, I'll just go, oh, salve, ut vales, mi figli, quam bonus tu es, mi figli. I'll just go something like that. Or I'll start speaking to him about, I can kind of tell him a story. I mean, but yeah, he likes it when I speak that to him, actually. Have you heard anything about learning from the Lyceum Institute? No, but my attitude towards formal teaching is that it's just the same as my issue with universities, to be honest. I'm not sure that having a teacher is really necessary for a lot of things. Sometimes I can see I've seen people make arguments for things like formal logic and stuff like that, but with languages, what you do with languages, it's a game of trying to understand what the words say, and you just you read and read and read, and that's how you get good at them. I mean, it's the same way. Like, a lot of people like to throw around words like, "Oh, comprehensible input, my comprehensible input," but like, I don't like when people rely on. I mean, specifically Stephen Krasson, who's really, really popular for, I don't think, very good reasons. I mean, I think, like, he pointed out the fact, you can learn a language by just immersing from it, and that's true. But his, I'm gonna start going on about his academic stuff. I just don't like his academic stuff. And there are better people out there for that kind of thing. So yeah, for those who have joined, yeah, I got married, I had a son, I learned a lot of Latin, got 2 degrees, got a job, and I'm working on so I've gotten Latin, and I'm working on 2 other languages. One, I've kind of looked at them both before, Ancient Greek and another one I won't name. Yeah, I'm just sort of learning these so I can evangelize, and so I can, I can actually interact with our traditions, which, is a pet peeve of mine that people don't do it. So yeah, that's kind of what's happened for the new viewers. A lot happened in my life. A lot of, I don't know if I'm certainly not the same person that I was when I started up this channel. But did a third of you guys seriously want to keep the hearts? Are you serious? Are you serious, guys? A third of you actually voted, I want to keep the hearts. I have a playlist just on learning. If you want, I could share it to you. I don't think posting the link in the chat works. I mean, with learning, it seems to me that it's just throwing lots and lots of time at something and trying to refine your method. I mean, and I think that's fairly generic advice for basically everything. I don't know how this would pan out with something like physics or mathematics. I mean, I did it as the school taught me. But I suspect it worked. I mean, that seems like fairly solid principles. You just spend a lot of time on something and you whack away at it and you try and expand what you're good at. Books on Lectio Divina by Joachim Tadot. There's one called The Ladder of Monks, which might be good. Very short. I think it's like 20 pages. Another one as well is The Ways of Mental Prayer, which is a lot more expansive than just Lectio Divina, but it talks about meditation techniques and stuff like that. I can hear my son screaming the place down. Thankfully, Rain, who's my wife's pseudonym, she's probably looking after him. Now that's a cringe. Oh, this bloody heart, man. Actually, can I pop it out? Maybe the popping out will solve the problem. That's a cringe third. Ah, yeah, it's not 25%. Okay, so it's kind of improved. Oh, you can hear him? You can hear him? No problem, Joachim. Is he that loud? Because normally when I'm, when I'm doing other things with a microphone, with a microphone, not this particular microphone, people can't typically hear him shouting the place down. You don't need to read the entirety of The Ways of Mental Prayer. Yeah, you don't. I mean, you can get the meditation technique stuff in. I think it's in the first. I think it's the first, at least 100 pages. As a very new Catholic and a mere catechumen, what should I be reading? The Catechism, definitely the Catechism. That's not even disputable. The Catechism is very, very important. Beyond that, I'd start looking into the spiritual life. I haven't actually read this. My wife really strongly recommends it. It's called Introduction to the Devout Life, which is a spiritual manual for lay people. Beyond that, I mean, it really depends what you want to do, right? Like, do you want to really get into biblical exegesis? Do you want to look at the Bible? A Catholic introduction to the Bible, the Old Testament by Brant Petrie and John Bergsma, I found was quite good. There's also the commentary from Father Haydock, which you can get online for free if you need stuff like that. That's always a good thing if you're interested in philosophy. I mean, you could read. I'm kind of hesitant to recommend you jump into St. Thomas, but I'm not very familiar with the material that is besides that. Besides Edward Fazer, who I suspect is probably good just as a New Catholic, but he's not. I mean, he's not like the greatest philosopher to ever live. I mean, it really depends what you want, Resvero. But like as bare minimum, read the Catechism. Yeah, bare minimum, read the Catechism and read Introduction to Devout Life, or maybe the Spiritual Combat. Like just pick a spiritual book, and talk to a priest. Hopefully, you've got a good priest, and he'll be able to help you out. Because there's many different kinds of people that approach the faith, and not every approach is going to be right for everyone, because not everybody has the same purpose in the body of Christ. But yeah, like definitely prayer and basic knowledge of doctrine. Also, yeah, whatever you do, don't go and debate people. Like, just don't. Just learn more about the faith and try not to just find haphazard arguments just to justify your position, because we have many authors who have spent their lives searching for these arguments, and they will be better than yours because they're just better skilled and better educated people. So it's a lot better to just steal their homework. Oh, I spoke to my priest last week to begin my catechesis for my conversion. Wonderful news, Aspiration. That's very good. Very good to hear that. Let's see. If there's any more questions, I will take them. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. If you've got any more questions, please do stick them in the chat, and I will respond. Because I'm sure that, I mean, I've got 20 people watching somehow on a channel that I haven't used for a few years. So, maybe some of you are interested. Or maybe you're just guys from the other channels I've set up, because I had that silly habit of setting up lots and lots of different channels, largely because I got sick of a certain environment, or I wanted to start a new habit, and I figured, if I start a new channel, then that will make the habit better. Okay, Joachim asks, doing a master's course on anthropology, my thesis will be about a certain tradition from my country which needs papers on it. Financially, am I messed up? TJW's OP Big Trinity book is great. Thomas Joseph White, I think you mean. Just for the sake of explaining that, socks on my feet. Financially, are you messed? There's it's not a fatal mistake, is it? I mean, I don't know what country you're in. I don't know how much your degree costs, but I mean, when I did my master's degree, to be honest, I didn't put much effort into my bachelor's degree. I largely, because I was a teenager who was obsessed with doing the thing that my degree ended up being, and so I could kind of coast, and that led to me reading loads and loads of books on theology, or listening through them more accurately. Just pick a useful skill. I mean, you're in anthropology. If you've got any kind of statistics module, go and learn. Oh yeah, Portugal. That's interesting. Yeah, go exploit when you're gonna, because I suspect you might be doing some statistics work. It might be worth getting your data analytics skills up, because you might use that with your thesis. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you're doing, but it's worth developing technical skills, I think. Beyond that, I can't really think of much else because I'm a tech person myself. Are you going to be doing streams more often? I don't actually know. There's a part of me that feels like I should, because there's part of me that feels the need to talk about God more. And I'm also hacked off with the situation that's going on the right online. Very hacked off, and I kind of want to engage with people more. The only problem with New Catholic books is the amount of typos I find in them. My work is more based on interviews. Okay. Still, I mean, I try and find some sort of, like a trade or something. I mean, you could. I mean, I can't imagine why you want to work HR, but I imagine there's a lot of people in there that are kind of a similar. I mean, they would be more like psychology people, and I imagine that would be a really hellish place to work. Actually, now I think about it, but yeah, I'd go and develop, you know, constructive skills like, I mean, software development's one. You could be a data analyst. You could, you know, be a carpenter. I mean, there's no shame in that. As much as we tend to look down on people like that, you know, I mean, my great grandfather was a bricklayer. I mean, you know, like, I just find things that are useful to do, like something that's more working with your hands, something you can offer to people, even if it's like, don't do drop shipping or anything like that. I mean, I hope that's dead. I hope that's dead. I remember thinking when that was going on, it was kind of silly. Become a civil engineer with a minor in architecture. You just do something that's tangible in the workplace. So software development, I think, tends to be pretty good for this kind of thing. Why should anyone believe that the Son is the cause of the Holy Spirit? Official Roman Catholic doctrine. Since Florence, you mean Nicaea. Since Maximus and St. Gregory, the theologian, explicitly reject this. They don't. They can't. That's silly reasoning. I mean, in what sense do you mean? Like, I know you're probably using this whole Eastern Orthodox argument where actually cause is just relation. But if we're talking about ontological cause, that's ridiculous because God is self-caused, right? I mean, so like saying that the Son isn't the cause of the Spirit, if we're just talking about, if we're just talking ontologically, I mean they're kind of causeless anyway. But you know, ipsum esse subsist. There, I'm sorry. He's just sort of triggered me. Other Discord sounds in the stream. Oh, bloody hell. Yeah, good point. I'll close Discord. Yeah, I opened it up to see if there was anything else. Software development trap is kind of a job. Job search is horrible. Multiple round interviews, trap of ghosting. Yeah, that happens. I mean, I remember I lost my job at the beginning of the year, and I had 3 months waiting for another one, but, you know, the job I got was pretty good in the end. But they pay reasonably well. Okay, sorry, I'll go back to the... Why does anyone believe the Son is the cause of the Holy Spirit? I mean, it's just in Nicaea. I mean, it's implicit in Nicaea because the phrasing... Is it Nicaea? The whole phrasing of the Nicene Constantinopolitan Creed is found in Revelation, and Revelation talks about the two streams, one which represents procession from the Spirit anyway, so... and also, we call him Maximus, we're Westerners. The tradition in question is transhumanism. Many people confuse this with transhumanism. Never heard of... Is it transhumescence? I don't know. I'm not very good with Portuguese. Let's see. Okay. You gonna engage with me some more? You know what? I might just open up Discord again and just mute it so I'm less annoying to you, mass creation, because I know you complained about this in the past. Oh yeah, that's another thing that I developed. I kind of went through this period where I lost any appreciation that I had for Eastern Orthodoxy and actually started to appreciate Protestantism a lot more. Because, I mean, I grew up around a lot of Eastern Orthodox stuff, particularly Russian Orthodox stuff. My grandfather was really into it. And then I started to learn more about Eastern Orthodox theology, particularly Neo-Palamite theology. I think you might have heard my son. And, like, I mean, I just don't see... Well, first of all, the whole point of at least what people hold up Neo-Palamite theology as solving is basically irrelevant, because there's no modal collapse in what would be called absolute divine simplicity anyway, because there's nothing forcing God, so there's nothing like imposing anything on His will, and that's before we get into problems with relations and how like somehow there being a real relationship between essence and energies at least if I listen to the priest at my local parish who did his master's thesis on, I don't know if it was Vladimir Losky, but it was something Neopalamism related. And he said, basically the relationship between the essences and energies in this view is the same as the relationship between father and son. And if it's God's operation, if it's God's energy that saves us, then this sort of introduces a very similar problem. So if the energies are what saves us, and that's as distinct from God's actual essence as the Father is from the Son, I don't see how this doesn't lead to a similar problem to patripassionism, where you have the energy being so distinct from the person of the Son that is it really the essence of the Son saving? TJW's Thomas Joseph White's section on the Filioque killed any Eastern Orthodox sympathy in me. The Filioque is biblical. Yeah, the Filioque is just biblical, right? It's in Revelation. But it's just very annoying. I find Orthodox just increasingly annoying. Okay, milady. She just took the phone that was the internet connection for this stream. I don't know what you're giggling about. Not to mention, the acts of different councils, saying, "Oh, we'll actually agree to be under Peter." Tee-hee, not really. And how they go, there's no spirituality in Catholicism. Thomas Aquinas was just a boring book nerd. And it's have you ever read? Did you know that Thomas had spiritual writings? And I'm sort of flexing on EOs when I'm really, really quite rusty on this now. It's not like I haven't really been through any of the fathers I don't think I've been through any of the fathers since I got married. Aside from, what I've seen in the Latin texts and Greek texts, and I haven't seen much in the Greek texts because I've basically only read John, and bits of John at that, not the whole thing. It's not like I've come across it that much, so I probably, to deal with these more, I need to go back into the fathers again. Which hopefully, I'm at a level in Latin now where I can start reading some of the fathers. I can understand a lot of it, but I'm far from complete, far from perfect on this thing. Yeah, that's one of the things I'm kind of stuck on, because I'm at this point, chat. I'm kind of interested in hearing what you have to say. I'm kind of in a position with Latin where I can read a lot of things, but not so well that it's not difficult. And I'm kind of caught between whether I should read the Summa or I should read through a big old 17th century biblical commentary. I'm kind of tending towards the biblical commentary, to be honest. What do you guys think I should read in Latin now? To give you an idea of how far I've kind of strayed from reading theological writings, my current Latin reading project is the translation of Diary of a Wimpy Kid, right? And I'm getting decent chunks of it, but I came across this video on bloody Diary of a Wimpy Kid online, and it's citing scenes that I remember from the Latin, and I'm missing lots of the context because I don't have Latin down to such an extent that I can read about a video about different things, like video illusus, video games. Yeah. I'm reading Diary of a Wimpy Kid in bloody Latin because I figured that it would help me with my vocabulary. And I tell you, weird book. It makes me feel weird. Yeah, people would say the Summa, right? But everyone reads the bloody Summa, and Diary of a Wimpy Kid author, the translator of Diary of a Wimpy Kid into Latin, also is the guy that translates the tweets from Pope Francis into Latin. So, very Catholic solidly all the way through, but the characters seem really disordered to me. And, people say that the main character, whose name I actually can't remember, I can remember his brother's names, but I can't remember his name. And they say he's a psychopath, and I can kind of agree. Is anybody else going to say something? So, I've been trying to find a copy of the sayings of the Desert Fathers in Latin, but whenever I look up the Vitae Patrum, it could be just that I'm not going deeply enough into the texts online. Yeah, Greg Heffley, that's the one. I don't think he actually I don't remember him naming himself in the text. Actually, no, he's Gregorius. He's called Gregorius in the Latin. He's called Gregorius, and it's Ronaldus, his best friend. The Golden Legend. That's a good one. I might read. I might read the Golden Legend. Actually, that's apparently a fairly easy one. Yeah, but I go to the Vitae Patrum, and the first story is about Saint Jerome, which feels a bit weird. I probably should just dive a bit more into the texts and just scan a bit around a bit, because I'm sure that the sayings of the Desert Fathers are in there, because I found the citations in the translations that I've got. Wait, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, why? Don't you tell us to read healthy literature? The reason why I'm reading Diary of a Wimpy Kid in Latin is because I heard that the best way of establishing a decent level of basic vocabulary is to read content that is known as slice of life. So, real life kind of stuff, like just normal life stuff. So I figured, well, what do I have access to in Latin that would remotely resemble this? And it turns out Diary of a Wimpy Kid was the only book that I have that kind of resembles it. And so I picked it up and started reading. Which is kind of crazy, isn't it? But it's a somewhat entertaining book, actually. It's just very disordered. It's kind of like how I was also I tried to learn Hindi for a bit and I eventually gave up. And I figured, well, one way of getting a really decent basic vocabulary, I suspected, was just to watch a hell of a load of Peppa Pig, because that stuff is designed for like 3 to 4-year-olds. So I can kill two birds with one stone. First of all, establishing a decent vocabulary in Hindi, and second of all, watching Peppa Pig to make sure that my son doesn't see anything too messed up. It's like I don't know if any of you have done this, but it's happened at least once, where I've been sat with Rain. I'll just call her Rain. That's my wife's name online, and I'm sat with her, and we watched a Disney movie. We watched Tangled, just at complete random around my mum's house, and as adults, it struck us as really messed up, and we started talking about it, and just like me and my wife going back and forth about it. Right? There's asterisk, actually. Asterisk is in Latin. I have a copy of Harry Potter in Latin, the Philosopher's Stone, or the Sorcerer's Stone if you're American. There's a copy of The Hobbit, but The Hobbit is really hard. I tried reading The Hobbit in Latin, and it's like being utterly overwhelmed with this descriptive vocabulary that I've never seen before, and it's really a hard read. It might be easier now that I've read a lot more, but when I first read it, it was very hard. There's a lot of translation. There's Alice in Wonderland, I think. A lot of things translated into Latin. There's The Little Prince, which is famously translated into tons of different languages. There's all sorts. I wouldn't even be shocked if Peanuts is in Latin, to be honest, because you can find a lot of things in Latin. I wouldn't be surprised if you could find episodes of The Simpsons in Latin. Latin is the most living dead language I've ever seen. Right? Like, I imagine there is more content available in Latin than for a lot of languages in India and Africa that have, a few million speakers. Like, people call Latin a dead language. No, it is very much alive. The only thing is that it's not spoken as a vernacular, but it has a very large community. There's probably a bigger Latin-speaking community than there is an Esperanto-speaking community for comparison. Let alone minority languages in India or something like that. At least online. Guys, go read healthy literature. That includes Diary of a Wimpy Kid. If there's anything else for anybody to ask, now would be the time to ask it. I'm going to close the stream otherwise. I'll give you guys 2 minutes, why not? Right, let's check again. If there's nothing else. Latin's not a national language either. I mean, or anyway, well, like neither's Punjabi, neither's I don't know, Gujarati. that's not shocking. Even my lib friends regard Esperanto as a language spoken by those who identify as poly. Seen this guy before. Wasn't his great idea that right wingers are just reading Bible stories? Yes. Yeah. Built our civilization. Any workout advice? Not really. I'm not in a position to give it. I don't know if you mean poly as in polyamorous or polyglot. When will you make content on the regular or semi-regular again? I don't know. I think I should. Not sure when I will. Not sure what kind of thing either. Not really sure generally. Like I sort of cut it all out because I thought it was kind of useless. But there's a nagging feeling inside of me that I should be making it. Like it's actually making a serious difference, and that I'm actually just neglecting some sort of fundamental responsibility in the pit of my soul. I assumed polyamorous. I thought it was like something that was that people would consider to be LGBT to speak Esperanto. Right, so that being said, I think I'm going to bring the stream to a close. Hope you guys are okay. Hope everything's been alright. Might make some more videos in the future. Obviously a bit of a rambly one here. No, I'm not, Rez. I'm telling you, I'm not in a state to give workout advice. Actually, one thing I did discover that is kind of related to this, that I'm finding is having a positive impact in my life, is that it turns out that during the 17th century and probably before this, the majority of Europeans only had 2 meals a day. They would have lunch and dinner, and they wouldn't have breakfast unless they were manual labourers. And adapting this has actually had a positive impact on my weight. So that's one thing I could probably give some advice on. But I haven't lifted in a very long... I haven't lifted... Well, actually, I have lifted in a few... I lifted... Okay. Last time I lifted was about a month ago, and I yeeted my leg because I haven't lifted in quite a long time. And I suspect part of that is... It might be my diet, because it's not like I'm eating a lot less than I was before, and I'm feeling a bit weaker, so that might be it. But yeah, I mean, I could give that advice. You know, like if you want to eat like your ancestors, that's how they ate, and I think that might actually positively impact some people here. It certainly has positively impacted me. But yeah, I'll bring the stream to a close. Hope you guys have had a good time, and I will see you guys later. Bye bye.